Over here in the UK, we don't really know who Candice Owens is, but having recently checked it out, I can confirm that she has some worrying views, not least on science. You don't want to miss this one. Here we go. Hello all and welcome along to another episode of Tinfoil Tuesday with me, Simon Dan. Thank you very much for joining me. Right, on with today's video, which features Candice Owens, and it's taken from the Jack Neil podcast. Now, all was pretty normal for her, I guess, until Jack asked about the moon landings. Here we go, everyone.
I want to go more into the moon landing, actually. You called the moon landing the Easter Bunny for adults, which I think is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, that. I love that we're talking about this because, so what's funny is a lot of people, like, we just have good, like, you have your instinct. I always say, like, your gut is divine. Like that, somebody tells you something and you just go, doesn't really make sense, right?
Yes, this is called personal incredulity. It means you can't believe or understand something. Therefore, you don't believe that something.
I don't really know. But then suddenly psychology, what they've realized, and this goes back to Sigmund Freud and then Edward Bernays, who was considered the father of propaganda in America, who was Sigmund Freud's nephew. They realize that if you just keep saying to someone something, it becomes true. And again, the bigger of a lie, people will believe it.
I don't know about that. Flat earthers have been saying that the earth is flat for decades and still people don't believe them.
And so what we have is what Scott Adams refers to as the non-expert problem. So your gut tells you, like, sounds pretty crazy that we went to the moon all these times for a couple of years and then we just didn't go back forever and we were just like done. Like, that sounds weird. And where's the technology? And they didn't even have cell phones. And like, you're telling me this, they live streamed this and there was a phone call. I don't know, like, it just seems like a little weird for like 1969. But you're like, but I don't really understand kind of outer space. Yeah. So I'm not going to debate this, but my gut tells me this is all BS. So that was where I was.
Yes, and you said it yourself, the non-expert problem. Although this does not stop a lot of people telling you things that they've got no business or qualification to do so.
And then what's interesting is, like, Bill Maher made fun of me for this, like, a little tweet that I said that, I don't know, the moon landing just seems weird. And whenever the media, like, tries to make you feel like you're stupid, that's usually, for me, like, the first breadcrumb that, like, you're onto something, because that's what they are trained to do. They're trained to sit here and tell you, you're ridiculous, you don't believe this. Well,
in this instance, I can tell you that you are not onto something. But to be honest, thinking that you are because Bill Maher made fun of you is not ideal, is it?
So then I decided to read this document. It was 119 pages. And I know there's a book too, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. And he just broke down the science in a way that was very digestible. So I didn't have a non-expert problem.
Yeah, you still do, because Bart Sabrell, the author, is not an expert either.
And so there's a basic thing that you guys can do. If you're like somebody who's like, it had to have happened, the moon landing, what you can do is look up, I'm calling this the firmament, but it's the, what is the belt, the 200 miles out, you hit the
asteroid belt? No.
Van Allen belt.
Closer to 400 miles, but stretching all the way out to 36,000 miles with an inner and outer belt, yes.
Okay, so there's a Van Allen belt. So we have never gone beyond that belt, right? There's been no human that's gone beyond that belt since the moon landings, allegedly. And not even Elon Musk, when they go out to space, they have to stay, like, there is a space station, but like once you get 200 miles out, you hit the Van Allen belt, which has an incredible amount of radiation. NASA has said, like, in order for us to get through it, we'd have to have cement blocks around someone.
I don't think NASA have ever said that, have they, Candice? During the Apollo missions, spacecrafts were planned to pass carefully through the belts as quickly as possible, reducing the amount of time exposed to radiation. Astronauts spent only a few minutes passing through the most intense parts of the Van Allen belts. That is all.
So I want you to just Google, if you're watching this, the temperature of the Van Allen belt. Okay, just Google that.
Yes, please do, and then proceed to misinterpret heat and temperature, which of course are not the same thing.
And you're going to get something like, at the lowest points in the Van Allen belt, it's, I think, 3,000 Kelvin. And at the highest points, it's like 30,000 Kelvin. And then I want you to Google what material the shuttle was made out of. And then I want you to Google at what temperature
that would burn.
That would just burn. And you're just going to laugh out loud. You go, this literally doesn't make sense that an aluminum alloy could have gone through the Van Allen belt for an hour and a half or 59 minutes. It just couldn't have happened. It literally can't happen. There's no explanation for it. They just don't even talk about it. They don't like talking about the Van Allen belt because that part makes entirely no sense.
And yes, you have done just that. The temperature of the Van Allen belts is indeed that high. But the air pressure up there is almost non-existent. For heat to transfer like that, you need collisions of particles. So conduction or convection. And even though the particles in the Van Allen belt have high energy, they do not carry enough thermal energy because of the low density of particles to significantly heat a spacecraft. The spacecraft's materials and design handle this limited heat transfer with no problems at all. Now, no one is afraid to talk about that. It's a simple explanation correcting your misunderstanding.
And then he went through and he spoke about like the camera. So they allegedly took camera. I want you to Google the temperature of the moon. Okay. They had their big bulky gloves on. They took these cameras and just go, hey, what camera is that from 1969 that was able to survive temperatures of like 250 degrees of Fahrenheit to like negative 250 degrees Fahrenheit, just like on the moon while they were just like jumping around.
The same principle I just talked about then applies here too. You're not proving anything with this.
And you're going to go, where is this camera? Then Google's going to tell you, oh, actually, they only made 8 of those cameras and they decided to give them, you're going to love this, to a guy who makes movies. I'm blanking on the name of this guy who just a couple of years before the moon landing, he's a famous director. He made a movie about outer space. What's it? Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick.
Oh, he has them?
A movie director. He got them.
And that's simply not true. Again, most of the Hasselblad cameras used on the Apollo missions were left on the moon to save weight on the return journey. The only thing NASA gave Kubrick was a lens used for space photography. That is it.
So we can't look at those. That technology's been lost.
Yeah,
Stanley
yeah,
Kubrick, though, used it when he shot the movie 2 years prior. It's like he obviously shot this like fake set moon landing. Why would you give them to him?
As I said, they didn't, Candice.
And it's
But
like,
do you know who he was friends with?
who was he friends with?
Oh my gosh, this is amazing. You don't know this. So he was friends with Jack Parsons, who established the Apollo program for NASA. So those two were friends. They were out in LA and they literally worshiped Satan. They were both Aleister Crowley recipients. So they were considered, the religion was called Thelema. They believed that they could create basically Aleister Crowley was a Satanist, the most well-known Satanist of the time. And he basically, when he was a kid, he read the Bible, read Revelation, read about the whore of Babylon, which would like conquer the nations, and got inspired by the whore of Babylon and created a religion about that, which was called Thelema. And his protege was Jack Parsons. He was the creator of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which became the Apollo program.
Okay, first off, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory did not become the Apollo program. And Jack Parsons was a founder of JPL, but not the Apollo missions. His work helped with the Apollo missions, yes, but he didn't start the program. Anyway, Jack moves on to dinosaurs, and it gets a bit more interesting from here.
It's interesting, the conspiracies that we've been talking about so far, there's a lot of incentive structures, like reasons that the government would want to push these narratives for their own benefit. But one that you talked about, and you haven't gone into it too much in depth, but you don't believe dinosaurs are real.
So this is a funny one. So this is one of the ones where I'm like, I'm not kidding. This conversation happened and it was so funny. I was just walking with Savannah, my manager, because we do like these little evening walks. And I just looked up to her and I was like, dinosaurs, that seems pretty fake and gay.
Really? The concept of dinosaurs is not only fake to you, but they also have a sexuality? Right.
She's like, Savannah's from Tennessee. She's like, I've never believed in dinosaurs. Like literally, everyone thinks there's like some conspiracy behind it. I was like, that was how it started. And I was like, what on earth? You rawr. I'm like, it's funny because people will literally say they don't believe in God, but then tell them like dinosaurs aren't real and they fall apart. Like, I'm like, okay, so they're just roaming the planet. And I was like, that's really interesting. But then because I got into and very much subscribe and believe and know to be true that there is a Christ conspiracy that's happening right now, which is the intentional removal of Christ because they want people not to believe in God, but instead to believe in humans.
Yeah, that's called people going about their daily lives not worried about a deity. It's not anti-Christ, it's just a non-belief.
Well, that is what evolutionary theory was about. Because rather than making human beings believe that they had a creator, there was no concept of a dinosaur until 1850. That's very recent, right? That's the first time they were like, we actually think that there were these reptiles that are roaming the planet. And then within that same decade, they were like, dinosaur bones. And then they started finding them everywhere. I'm like, okay, so nobody found this.
Again, not true. The word dinosaur came after the discovery of dinosaur bones. And Richard Owen coined the phrase in 1842. The first dinosaur bones, the very first ones, were found 200 years before that.
And then like
Really?
suddenly there's entire museums, and in China, they have actually been caught manufacturing dinosaur bones many times over. And it is the case that dinosaur bones, for whatever reason, are always just found by the paleontologist. Like, it's not like you and me walking outside. I'm like, hey, a dinosaur bone. And, or by somebody who's related to a paleontologist. It's very strange.
A farmer found the first ever Argentinosaurus bone. And that's just one example. There's many more. Again, that was not true.
But anyways, I don't know for sure.
But you think the incentive structure there is to move away from God?
Well, they want you to believe that God isn't real, that like the theory of evolution, like you're an ape. What happened was just over time, like you used to be a little chimpanzee, but then with time, this is why you learned about theory of evolution, Homo sapien, Australopithecus, but then we were Homo erectus, and now you're a human being.
Isn't that the definition of Satanism?
Yeah.
Like to believe that like Earth is the kingdom, kind of?
Yes, and that is what these people were pushing. And so once you start to realize that Satanism is real, that these people who created everything that we view in Western society to be real believed in Satan, right?
But Satan is equally as fictional. They are also incorrect. And on top of that, I know several people that are religious, believe in God, and understand that dinosaurs were real. You're talking as if the only people that understand dinosaurs were real are atheists. They're not.
They know God's real, and yet they're convincing everyone that God isn't. And so when you speak to people that are super rational out of school, you're like, well, the evolutionary theory makes sense. So it makes sense to you that you started as a chimpanzee. Like, that's a faith, buddy. It makes sense to you. And if you say to them, like, of course you went to the moon, then you start talking about basic science, but they don't actually know. They can't talk to you about Van Allen belt. They don't know anything. It's a faith.
And you don't know these things either, Candice, which is why you're wrong.
Like they have asserted, and what's interesting, even that, going to the moon, the Bible talks about a firmament. And if the firmament in the Bible, if you look at that, you would go, okay, well, it says that as below, so above, and this is how God created it. So if the Bible is real, which I know in my heart to be true, there's no way we got past this firmament.
Again, there are plenty of people on this earth who are religious, believe in God, and understand that we went to the moon.
But it's interesting because, once you start to realize that all of it is about countering everything that is in the Bible, right? You have a creator. No. Evolutionary theory is real, actually. What happened was a meteor hit, and I don't know, like the meteor hit and wiped out the dinosaurs, but then like the lizards came. I don't even really, when you get down to even just thinking about that, you're like, okay, so it wiped out the dinosaurs. And then what happened? They're like, well, then the amoeba was around, but then like little lizards are from that. I actually don't have a lot of questions. I wish I was in 6th grade again, because they tell us all this stuff like dinosaurs are like when you're in 2nd grade, and guys are like, yeah, guys are the hardest about the dinosaurs. They are dinosaur stands.
I love dinosaurs growing up.
I know, boys love it. It's like a culture. So when I said this on my show, I was like, dinosaurs are fake and gay. My producer, all the boys were like, no, you've taken it too far.
You've just openly admitted that you don't know enough about it, but then continue to say that they're fake. You see the issue here, Candice? I think we'll leave this one now and say that we're all done and dusted for another Tinfoil Tuesday. Let me know in the comments there what you thought of Candice's views. But for now, I'm going to say thank you so much for watching today. It truly is appreciated. If you enjoyed it, please do hit the thumbs up button. Subscribe as well if the feeling takes you. And a share would be massively appreciated too. I've been Simon Dan. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the first Final Experiment review video of 2025. See you then.